In any case of being at least a semi-interested musical nomad, you'll inevitably have had at least 3 other semi-interested musical nomads come up to you with a copy of Talking Heads' seminal 1980 album, Remain in Light, in their hands for them to concerningly wave in your face and suggest that you listen to it ASAP. Of course, I reckon the hype is deserved, and so do many other people. Only a few. So much that if you happen to have listened to it before said crowd of semi-interested musical nomads came up to you, you would then have a chance to concerningly wave it back in their faces because you got there first and you now have the upper hand. What was I talking about again? Remain in Light owes a lot to the rhythms and charisma of African funk music. In fact, African music in general seemed to capture a lot of prominent musicians' interest during the 80s, to the point where Paul Simon sprinted to catch a bit of it for himself and brewed a watery soup vaguely flavoured with African styles but mostly copious amounts of MSG. In 2018, a lot of those with their eyes and ears on the music world pay respects to what Remain in Light represents, being inspired by the music of non-Western cultures, but not being so pompous enough to treat it as some kind of novelty Halloween costume without understanding where it even comes from. Cultural appropriation is a tricky pool of sensitive discussion anyways, and it sucks to see it so carelessly thrown aside, though at the same time culture can't really be held in a vacuum. Whether you like it or not, it's constantly progressing, so the mystery of whether we should keep an eye on old traditions or look to their placement in the modern day is about as convoluted a question as an ASCII art textpad file opened with the wrong screen resolution. Remain in Light is a clever record, but it's also a confusing one, and I think David Byrne and his crew of equally legendary band members know that. I say I think as if there's even a slight chance that Byrne isn't self-aware. I mean, he does wear this abnormally large suit. By the way, Kanye and Senior Pump, you weren't the first people to emulate maximum width built in the musical world, you bumbling imposters. Though in fairness, I suppose that's less humiliating than forgetting not to swear on live television dressed as a bottle of sparkling water. Is this a fever dream? David Byrne's lyrics have the eccentricity to perplex anyone hearing it for the first time, as he yells lines like, "Take a look at these hands," and "You may find yourself with a beautiful house, with a beautiful wife. But how did I get here?" But apparently, all of this is satirical hilarity. I say apparently only because I still have no clue what it's trying to be, but I just know that I bloody like it. There's a certain cadence to the album that works over such bizarre funk loops, topped with the electronically creamy money shot of none other than Brian Eno. So anyways, that was a review of Remain in Light by Talking Heads. I give it an ecstatically strong and steadfast 8 out of 10. Goodbye. Except not really. It's 2018, and paying tributes to these classics is something we all love to do, via the covers and little homages. But what happens when an African musician herself decides to pay homage to an album which in turn was paying homage to African musicians? Strokey chin, strokey chin. It wasn't a rhetorical question, by the way. Angélique Kidjo's here to give her own spin on Remain in Light. The most enlightening thing, about this covers album is that 1, for a covers album it's surprisingly good, yes, but 2, it brings the African funk influence all the way back to its roots, to the point where the songs now take on an entirely new spirit and charisma, even general sound. So if you weren't a fan of Remain in Light in the first place and managed to survive the onslaught of angry mucore enforcers, which would indeed include me amongst that crowd, you shameful excuse for a music fan, I would still recommend this to you, only because the eccentricity that one may find grating on the first album is completely transformed into something strangely warm and inviting and friendly, like the first handshake with someone who you sense is going to become a very good pal for a very long time. And so much of the power in Kidjo's voice when she sings one of Byrne's infamously odd lines manages to make the song suddenly make sense. What? How did you manage to do that? The percussion is on point, there's a cavernous reverb that helps the album maintain a mystical air, and on the notoriously slower and easier paced second half of the record, Houses in Motion returns so closely to the Afrobeat roots. If you told me they were originally written by Fela Kuti, I'd bloody well believe you, buddy. The entire second half of the record seems to transform into some kind of extended campfire story, and although this reimagining of Listening Wind is absolutely fantastic, it's the ending moments of the album that feel a little bit scant in comparison to the rich and fulfilling first half. And if you're going to rebut by saying that the original had that flaw too, I'd actually agree. The second half is significantly less exciting than the first, although thinking about it now, that's a bit unfair to say considering they're two completely different sides of a very valuable doubloon. It doesn't drop the sense of fun on the first half, and it doesn't drop the sense of mystery on the second half. I just wish that each half would share their qualities a little bit like fractional and stylistic blood brothers. Kidjo's perspective on the original album is insightful and worth a look. I'll link it in the description for those who can read. For now, my arbitrary rating for this album is a fairly bold 7 out of 10. It's an album that feels like it's celebrating so many things at once, and although Krayshawn's soon-to-be historically recorded musical legacy isn't one of them, I can still show a big amount of respect to such a daring and excellent tribute to the roots of African beat and funk music, as well as the 70s and 80s band that paid their own tribute to them themselves.